This lesson is entitled Multi-Level Lists and Styles, otherwise known as numbered headers. Sometimes in a document, you have some styles that you want to apply, typically headers, different kind of headers, level 1, 2, or 3, but they also have numbers associated with them. And those numbers technically are considered multi-level lists, and they're associated with styles. So let's take a look at that. Instead of creating a blank document, just to speed things up a little bit, I already have a simple document here. It just says my document is the title. I have a page break, Control Enter for a page break. Then down here, we actually start our document, and our document doesn't have any styles applied to it. Everything is just normal. I'm going to do my dialog box opener for my styles, and it opens up as a styles pane off to the side. If it's not convenient there, I can grab it and move it anywhere I want, to the other side or over here. I can dock it again. I can also resize it. I'm going to pull it out a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. And so here I have all of the styles by default that come with Microsoft Word. So we're talking about these different kind of headers, right? And about how we deal with numbering them. So one thing you could do is, and you might think of doing this, is you simply select these different things that you want numbered. Like these are major headers like video, options, themes, and this is all the information about it. So you might come up here and say, well, I want these numbered, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick one of these number groups, like, I like this 1, 2, 3, right? And I make that a 1. Well, that's nice, but now you're coming down to here and you're saying, I also want that to be the same thing here. And it's smart enough to figure out that's a 2, but that can be a little tedious and it's a little problematic for several reasons. I'm going to do Control Z once and Control Z again just to undo that. Instead, since all of these are going to be a header anyways, and let's just click on the default header, I make that a header 1, and I click on this one and I make it also a header 1. So these are all major headers. This is a header 1. These are actually header 2s. Let's say I want header 2s here. And layout's a header 2. But this row here, that's a header 3. And this column, that's a header 3. And this outline right here, that is back to a header 1. Okay? So I applied some styles to these. And this one by default was already normal. And down here, that's normal. And you can see normal over to the right as well. So I have headers. So since I have to apply headers anyways, why not associate the header with numbering, right? So there's an easy and a hard way to do that. So let's look at the easy way. We don't have to customize. We can just use things that are built into Word to do that. So the easiest thing to do, and just to be very safe, I always like to start with the very first header 1. So this would be the very first thing that's header 1. And you see here, sure enough, it's header 1 is the style. But we're going to associate numbering with it. And to do that, I'm not going to come over here to my numbering group. I'm going to come over here to what's called multi-level list. And I'm going to click it. And we have a lot of different kinds of multi-level lists that we can choose from. The multi-level list we want is the one that Microsoft Word has already decided that it's going to associate headings with numbers. So take a look at this a minute. Heading 1 will be 1. Anything that's a heading 2 will be 1.1. And anything that's a heading 3 will be 1.1.1. So the headings are already associated. If I chose this one, I'll still have to associate the heading with the number. This is pre-associated. So watch what happens when I click on it. These become 1, right? And this is a major 2, and this is a major 3. And look at this. Automatically, though, that heading 2 and that heading 3, this is a major heading. It was a heading 1, but this was a heading 2, so it got 1 point. I got 3.1, 3.2, 3.2. And remember that this over here was a heading 3 over to the right, a heading 3. So it's 3.3.1, 3.3.2, and then this is a 4. So everything is just working perfectly by making that association first. Now, granted, this might not look like you want it to do, but it did allow us to do the numbering, the multi-level list numbering associated with the header, and that's the key point here. And over here, you can see this is going to be a 1, a 1.1, a 1.3, because we might decide to, you know, come over here and we'd say, oh, this is the beginning of a major header, and so all I have to do is click here and click here heading 1, and it just picks up 5 for me. And over here, this thing about video, that's actually a heading 2, so I can click heading 2, and it picks up the numbering for me, 5.1 right here. So this is a brilliant way of doing it, to do it very quick. And I used to do a lot of customizing to create what I wanted and then to create the association. But if you use this feature, multi-level, and if you choose one of these formats that has heading already associated with the numbering, then it all works beautifully. So let's just talk for a minute about changing these. And you may have seen in other videos, you can change these easily. But I'm going to select my text because I just don't like that color blue for this. I'd rather that be black, and I'd rather it be a little smaller, and I'd rather it be bold. And so by selecting that text, not the number, but the text, I can change heading 1, come over to heading 1, and say update heading 1 to match selection. And now all my heading 1s look the same. These are all heading level 1. And I can do the same for level 2, obviously. I'm going to make that a little smaller, make it black, make it italics maybe, and come over here and say update level heading 2 to match selection, all the level 2s. And same thing for 3. Maybe that should be even smaller, and maybe not italicized, maybe underlined, which is unusual, but let's just do it. And level 3, update heading 3 to match selection, and now all of my 3s look like that. Okay, but what about the numbering? What about changing, altering what the numbering looks like, right? This was the text, but not the numbering. Well, in order to do that, we want to select the number 1 header 1, right? So this is a header 1 and this is a header 1, but we want the number 1 header 1. So select the number 1 header 1, make sure that's selected, and now we're going to go to our multi-level list, and we're going to come down here to define new multi-level list. It sounds like we're starting from scratch, but it actually lets us edit the current one we're in, right? So I'm going to click on Define Multi-Level List. And here we see some awesome things. We see heading 1 and what it looks like, and what heading 2 looks like, and what heading 3 looks like. And down here, we actually see Enter Format for Number. So why do we just have a 1 and not a dot or anything? Because we entered a 1 and not a dot or anything. But what if we wanted a dot? Well, I should just say the reason this has gray behind it is because it's using the automatic numbering from Microsoft Word. That's why it has gray behind it. We don't want to change that. We want to click right next to it and put a period and then maybe a 0. So we've added to heading 1 a period and a 0. Okay? And if we wanted to do anything else, like change its indentation or its alignment, alignment means it's starting, right on the edge of the paper because it's aligned to 0. Indent is how far in do we indent from there to start that one. So we could change those if we want. And here is where we could change the font. So if we wanted a different color, if we worried that it was blue or green or something, we could make those changes right there. So I'll say OK. Everything's fine there, and say OK. Now here's the beauty. Level 1 is now 1.0, 2.0 for level 1. And this probably doesn't need to be changed because it was already, 3.1. We don't need, 0.0 or anything. So this might be all we needed to do to really get the look and feel that we want. I need to also mention over here in our styles, the reason we can see exactly what it's going to look like is because at the bottom it says Show Preview. If I uncheck that, we just see that we have headings, but if I click Show Preview, we can see what these are. So we've now applied numbering very easily to our headings. So anything I want to do down here, one more time, let's look at it. Let's just say that this needed to be heading 2. I just select it, just click in it, come over here to heading 2, and I get the number formatting correctly as well as the header formatting correctly because they're all associated together. Now just one last thing, you might decide that you want some indentation. I mentioned it earlier, but why don't we go ahead and indent heading 2 just to see how that would work, okay? So we're on heading 2, and I like to start with the very first one that uses a heading 2, so I'm going to scroll up here, and it looks like 3.1 is the very first one. So I'm going to select that. I select right on the numbers. I'm going to go to my multi-level list. I'm going to go to Define New Multi-Level List. And I'm going to come over here to Text Indent. So this is the text. So in this case on 3.1, do you see the indent here between the number and the next time we have anything, we have these words? That's the indent. This one has almost none. This one has a little bit more, 0.4, but it's still aligned at 0. So what if I just increase that just a little bit to maybe 0.3? And then I say OK. And so now all of these are indented slightly, and they still have their indentation here as well before they start the text. So that might be, I know, a little more easier to look at. I'm going to turn off my paragraph symbol up above, and normally we always have that on so that we can do our formatting better, but I'm going to turn it off just so we can kind of see what things look like with it on. So that should give you almost all control over associating numbers with your headings, or almost any style, but typically we do it with our headings 1, 2, and 3.